We resume in the slumbering Weald, where Ash has just received a psychic message while a four-legged figure watches him from out of the fog. Desperately, our young hero attempts to call out to get more information on what this all means, but just as suddenly as the fog appeared, it vanishes, leaving behind no trail of anyone but himself and Pikachu. Then from the gloom comes a light, and Ash runs towards it, only to find that it's Raihan carrying a torch. The older trainer says that he was worried about Ash when he ran off like that, but Ash has bigger things on his mind, asking if Raihan saw anything big on four legs or heard anything strange recently. Raihan pauses, then slowly nods, saying that when the fog kicked up, he saw something like what Ash is describing in the distance, right before he got a message in his head. Eagerly, Ash asks Raihan to repeat the message, and so the Dragon Master does, saying that it was, "You are the one who guards his true love's dreams, stalwart, passionate, a shield of love. In the days to come you will be tested to see if your shield is made of brittle iron that cracks under pressure, flashy gold that is pleasant to behold but good for little else, or the true steel that Galar requires. And should you pass the test, we will meet again on the darkest day." Ash repeats this final sentence with Raihan, and when his friend looks to him, Ash explains that he received a very similar message, though his called him a sword of hope. He then asks if Raihan has any idea what any of it means, but Raihan admits that most of it sounded like a crazy riddle to him, with the only bit that made any sense being the reference to the darkest day. Ash asks what that is, and Raihan explains that it was a big cataclysm that occurred in Galar centuries ago, promising to show Ash the tapestries of it that hang in the Hammerlock Vault when they get there. However, for now, they really should be getting back to the lab. Ash agrees, and so the pair set off back towards Wedgehurst at top speed. Back at Professor Magnolia's lab, Ash and Raihan are greeted by a worried-looking Magnolia, Oak, and Sonia, who all with varying degrees of frustration tell them they shouldn't have run off like that, especially with night falling. Ash and Raihan hang their heads, saying they're sorry for worrying everyone, before Sonia asks if they at least found Scorbunny. Turning on a dime, Ash grins that he sure did, showing her its Pokeball. Magnolia nods that at least that worked out, before telling them that they will be staying the night here, in a tone that makes it very clear she isn't asking. No one has any objections, and as they all sit around the large kitchen table to have dinner, Raihan relays the events of Slumbering Weald, including the encounter he and Ash had. Oak admits that he doesn't have much knowledge of mist-dwelling creatures, especially ones who speak in riddles, and so defers to Magnolia and Sonia as having more expertise. Magnolia frowns that she too is flummoxed, since it sounds like they encountered a Pokemon, but she doesn't know any Pokemon matching the boy's description, which can do what they described. Sonia agrees, saying that she's also troubled by how the Pokemon reference the Darkest Day, as though it were an event yet to come, which the two professors agree with her. Magnolia then asks her granddaughter if she'd be willing to look into the Darkest Day, and these mystery Pokemon for her. Since there's a mystery to be solved, then it's their duty as scientists to solve it. Sonia graciously agrees, and so the meal returns to a state of light conversation. Meanwhile, in the Slumbering Weald, Jessie, James, Meowth and Wobbuffet are preparing to have their dinner as well. Having followed the twerps in their hot air balloon all day long, they are eager to stop and fill their hungry bellies, since even villains need to have meal breaks. And so, having anchored their balloon to one of the wood's trees, the group split up in pursuit of a clearing to have a picnic in. In the dark of the night, it's hard to see very far ahead of themselves, and as a result, James soon finds himself standing on something inexplicably soft and squishy. Looking down, all he can see is another patch of mottled grey and green ground, until suddenly, it appears to grow a pair of eyes. The blue-haired man shrieks at this sight and so lifts his foot in shock, but even more shockingly, the patch of ground seems to come with him, leaping up, and with spikes he hadn't noticed until now clamping painfully around his shin. James' shrieks quickly become howls of pain, which bring Jessie, Meowth and Wobbuffet running. When they find him, James is hopping on the spot, trying desperately to get whatever this is off his leg to no avail. Thankfully, when Jessie and Meowth are each able to grab one side of the clamp, they're able to peel it away to reveal that the culprit is a Pokemon. Rubbing his leg, James says it kinda looks like a Stunfisk, but different, while Jessie pipes up that she read once that some Pokemon in this region have variants, just like in Alola. Meowth asks if she thinks this is one, and Jessie says it obviously must be, which is great since they can send it to the boss, and it'll be totally unlike any Stunfisk he's ever seen before. However, it seems Stunfisk has other ideas, barking something angrily before leaping out of Jessie and Meowth's arms and clamping shut around James's shin once more. As James resumes his pained howls, Jesse asks Meowth for translation, and Meowth explains that Stunfisk has decided it doesn't want to go to some stranger, it likes James, and that's that. Hearing this, James stops screaming, and in a soft voice asks Stunfisk if it really means that it likes him. The trapped Pokemon responds by loosening its grip a little and warbling something the Team Rocket agent can tell is meant in the affirmative. Smiling, James kneels down to stroke its spine, offering it a place on his team, though on the condition it stops mangling his leg. Warbling happily, Stunfisk agrees, and so slides off his soon-to-be trainer, allowing him to bop it on the head with a Pokeball and catch it. The next morning, Ash, Raihan, Bee, and Professor Oak board a train for Hammerlock, so that Oak can catch his flight back to Kanto, and Ash can challenge Raihan for his badge. An air of excitement fills their cabin, with even the usually stoic Bee cracking a smile at Ash and Raihan egging each other on about how easily they're going to beat the other. Finally, their station is called, and so the group disembark, splitting up in pursuit of their individual destinations. Ash tells Professor Oak to say hi to his mum for him, and Oak in turn tells Ash to do his best, before scratching Pikachu under the chin and telling him to look after Ash. Pikachu gives a happy squeak, and so Oak shakes hands with Bee and Raihan, calling it a pleasure to meet them and wishing them both well. The Galarian duo say the pleasure was theirs to meet one of the world's most well-regarded Pokemon researchers, and Oak smiles that they'll make him blush if they're not careful, before giving one last wave and heading off to catch his flight. The trio then turn their attention towards Hammerlock Stadium and the site of Ash's next gym battle. However, before heading up to the stadium, Raihan keeps his promise and shows Ash Hammerlock Vault and the tapestries held within. 4 of them hang on the wall, made of stone as ancient as they are, each depicting a scene from the legend of the Darkest Day. The first shows a pair of young men viewing a pinkish-blue anomaly forming in the sky. The second shows the anomaly growing into a tempest, while war and strife brew on the land beneath. The third shows the 2 young men taking up a sword and shield, presumably to stop the fighting, and the final tapestry shows the young men as kings, ruling over an era of peace. When they are done looking, Raihan grins fondly at the 4 tapestries, telling his companions that as gym leader it is his duty to watch over the Hammerlock Vault. However, he never honestly thought that the tapestries would have a use. Ash on the other hand looks put out, saying that he doesn't think anything useful will come of the tapestries, since as far as he can tell they're just old artworks from a really long time ago. Shrewdly, Bee suggests he give the third piece a closer look over, and Ash does so, before gasping and telling Raihan to come check something out. Looking concerned, Raihan asks what's wrong, to which Ash points out that this tapestry has a sword and shield on it, prompting Raihan and Bee to face fall at such an obvious fact being a revelation to Ash. Ignoring this, Ash continues that he doesn't mean there's a sword and shield on the image, he meant that it ties into what those mysterious misty figures called them, a sword of hope and shield of love. Getting to his feet, Raihan nods that this does make sense, since he believes these are meant to indicate the weapons the 2 kings used to stop the Darkest Day, while Bee posits that perhaps they were not weapons, but rather representations of the heroes themselves. Raihan agrees that this is more than likely, and if she's right, then he and Ash will have a lot of training ahead of them if they're somehow supposed to stop another Darkest Day. Ash nods, grinning that in that case, what better training is there than a gym battle? Smiling, Raihan replies that Ash read his mind, and so the trio depart for the gym in earnest now. Ash, Bee, and Raihan are the only ones in the gym when they reach the battlefield, and this is just how Ash likes it. Though it's fun to have a crowd cheering him on, this feels more like a gym battle to him, and so without a word he takes his place across from Raihan. Both bring out the same Pokemon as last time, Pikachu and Duraludon, with Raihan commenting that Primeape would have been a more advantageous matchup for this battle. However, Ash grins that while Raihan is right, he and Pikachu first challenged Raihan together, so they're going to be the ones to beat him. The Dragon Master laughs that maybe in a million years, as he hears Duraludon use Breaking Swipe. At once, the Steel Dragon's tail glows purple as it swings it at Pikachu. However, the Electric Rodent is quick to counter with an Iron Tail of equal power, cancelling out both attacks. Now it is Pikachu's turn to go on the offensive, and it does so with a quick attack which clangs harmlessly off Duraludon's steely hide, but also allows it to dart away when Raihan counters with Stone Edge. The 2 trainers then call their third attack at the exact same moment, and so Thunderbolt and Steel Beam clash in mid-air, before exploding with tremendous force that knocks both Pikachu and Duraludon off their feet. However, neither combatant is likely to go down from something as minor as this, and so with encouragement from their trainers, both Pokemon get back to their feet. The friends-turned opponents then give each other matching grins, saying that they think they've sized each other up enough to move on to the main event, and without another word, both begin to Gigantamax their Pokemon. Raihan recalls Duraludon to its ball, while Ash extends the arm carrying the Dynamax band, so the Dynamax energy can coat Pikachu. The little electric type then grows to gigantic heights, while Raihan throws the enlarged pink ball, bringing out his G-Max Duraludon to meet Pikachu. The pair of rivals eye off, then as one begin their next volley of attacks. Raihan wisely opens with Max Wormwind, knowing how much trouble Pikachu had with this during their first battle, but Ash and Pikachu have grown a lot since then, and with the added energy of Gigantamaxing, feel ready to meet the Max move head on. Like before, the energy drake bursts forth from Duraludon, roaring as it prepares to strike Pikachu, but before it can move, a pillar of steel bursts from the ground, skewering it through the chin and making it go limp. Several more spikes then burst up in a line headed directly towards Duraludon, thanks to Pikachu's Max Steel Spike, created from its Iron Tail. Having sacrificed maneuverability for power in this form, Duraludon has no choice but to endure this hit, and so the Steel Dragon lets out a metallic hiss as several of the spikes poke painfully into its underside. However, Raihan is no quitter, and so calls for a Max Rockfall to finish Pikachu off. At once, Duraludon stomps one of its massive feet, and from the ground bursts the stone sheet taller even than the Gigantamaxed Pokemon. It then begins to fall forward, and a bead of sweat forms on Ash's brow, as he realizes that unless he does something, Pikachu will become a Pika Pancake under the weight of all that solid rock. Thinking fast, Ash tells Pikachu to use Quick Attack on the stone to break it apart, and his partner does its best to obey. In trying to move, Pikachu finds this new giant body much more cumbersome than its regular form, and so despite its best efforts, cannot manage the speeds it normally could. However, as a trade-off, when it collides with the stone, there is far more force behind it, shattering the rock into millions of pieces and mitigating the worst of the damage. Alas, Ash is not out of the woods yet, as suddenly every piece of powderized stone starts to whip around, buffeting Pikachu and making it squeal in pain. Raihan grins that this is a secondary effect of Max Rockfall, and the reason is one of his favorite Max moves, since in his opinion, mastery of weather effects really takes a battle to the next level. Despite the new disadvantage this puts him and Pikachu at, Ash agrees, saying that he's even more pumped to beat Raihan now. Raihan smiles and is glad his friend hasn't lost his fighting spirit, and tells him that he has another surprise in store for him, as Duraludon's final move before the Gigantamaxing ends. Ash asks what it is, and Raihan reveals that when he used Max Wormwind against Pikachu, he was actually holding back, since Duraludon knows a special Dragon-type Max move only available to those of its species who can Gigantamax, called G-Max Depletion. Ash's grin only grows, and he urges Raihan to bring it on, since winning won't mean anything unless he knows both he and his Pokemon gave it their all. Raihan nods, saying alright, but Ash can't blame him if this knocks Pikachu out in one hit. However, Ash promises that it won't be an issue, telling him to bring out the move. Raihan complies, and with a cry, tells his Pokemon to use G-Max Depletion. Red and purple aura begins to swirl around Duraludon as it spins in place, until soon a maelstrom of draconic energy is emitted from the Steel Dragon. Then to add an extra layer of threat, spectral blue dragon wings positioned like scythes burst from the tornado, spinning with it to increase the momentum and cutting power. With a laugh, Raihan asks if Ash is still sure that he wants to face him at his best, as Duraludon starts to approach Pikachu, but Ash grins that he couldn't ask for anything more, calling for Pikachu to meet G-Max Depletion with a full-power Thunderbolt. Instead of a usual Thunderbolt, G-Max Pikachu fires a massive amount of electrical energy into the air, and soon giant lightning bolts begin to rain down on the field. Everywhere these bolts land, they explode with massive force, leaving craters in the battlefield. However, every time one gets near Duraludon, the wind being whipped up by the sandstorm or by G-Max Depletion blows it off course, keeping the Steel Dragon safe from harm. Knowing that soon both Pikachu and Duraludon will revert to normal, Ash struggles to think of a way to get past Raihan's near-perfect defense, and as another bolt is thrown off course, an idea strikes him. Grinning, Ash tells Pikachu to grab the next lightning bolt and use it like a spear to drive into Duraludon. The electric rodent understands, and so as the last lightning bolt falls, Pikachu jumps up and grabs it, before riding it into the heart of G-Max Depletion. Sand and draconic energy buffet Pikachu as it descends, but its added weight keeps the lightning bolt from being blown away, allowing it to make contact with Duraludon's head, and slowly start pressing the solid electrical current into it. And so the battle becomes a war of attrition to see which Pokemon can withstand the physical punishment for longer. Pikachu, who is being buffeted, or Duraludon, who is being electrocuted. Neither Pokemon is giving an inch, while down below, both trainers cry their support for their partners, knowing that this will be the make or break moment. And then, something does indeed break, and for one moment, Ash knows who is going to win this battle. However, before the match-ending move can be made, an explosion rocks the gym and forces everyone's eyes skyward. Something has caused the high tower ceiling of the stadium to cave in, and so without hesitation, the two combatants stop fighting and work in tandem to catch the crumbling masonry. Harsh daylight bursts in through the hole, and at the center of it is a Meowth-shaped silhouette that they all know. In unison, Ash, Raihan, and Bee cry out Team Rocket, as the villainous team reply with a cackle of "Who else?" Ash then tells Pikachu to blow these fools away with some more lightning bolts, but unfortunately, his time in the Gigantamax state has expired, and so in a flash of pink light, Pikachu returns to his usual size, too spent to even stand, let alone fight. Duraludon does the same seconds later, and Team Rocket jeer that it's so kind of the twerps to wear each other out, just in time for their arrival. Jessie and James then drop a pair of metallic cubes, which land beside Pikachu and Duraludon, before sparking to life and creating energy cages around the exhausted Pokemon. Ash and Raihan rush over to try and help, but Meowth hasn't delivered his present yet, and so drops a smoke bomb, which obscures everything in the arena. Hastily, Raihan brings out Flygon to clear away the smoke, but by the time he has done so, Team Rocket are gone, and they have taken Pikachu and Duraludon with them. Gritting his teeth, Ash says they have to find Team Rocket before they get too far away, and Raihan nods, telling Flygon to scout the surrounding area for Team Rocket's balloon. Flygon yips then takes off, while Scorbunny bursts out of its ball unbidden, pounding on its chest to convey its eagerness to help. And so it is decided that the group will split up and look for any sign of Team Rocket, with Ash and Scorbunny going one way, while Bee and Raihan will go another, promising to contact each other on their Rotom phones if they find any clues. Meanwhile, on a rocky plateau to the west of Hammerlock, Team Rocket congratulate themselves on a job well done with a snack. From their cages, Pikachu and Duraludon bark angrily at the villains, but Meowth tells them to pipe down since their twerpy friends won't be able to find them all the way up here. He then pulls out a paper bag containing 4 scones, which he distributes to his teammates. Toasting their success, James, Meowth, and Wobbuffet chow down on the baked goods, while Jessie in her hubris takes an extra moment to boast that it was her flawless plan that allowed them to finally steal Pikachu. She then goes to eat her own scone, but at the last second feels a sudden rush of air on her hand and winds up biting down on her own fingers. Looking at her hand, she sees that it's empty, and so with fire in her eyes demands to know which of her friends stole her scone. James and Meowth look at each other with confusion, saying they were eating their own, but Jessie screeches that it must have been one of them, since scones don't just vanish into thin air. Meowth sighs that Jessie's imagining things, and as he says this, a distinct hiss hangs at the end of his sentence. Jessie and James ask him to repeat that, and he does so with no sign of hissing, suggesting the noise came from somewhere else. Looking around, they quickly find the culprit, a Silicobra poking its head out of one of the many holes in the ground, and to their surprise, it has scone crumbs around its mouth. Fury back on her face, Jessie declares that she's going to give the no-good snack thief a piece of her mind. Silicobra accepts this challenge, and so leaps at her. But using her brain for once, Jessie has Wobbuffet stand between her and the serpent and use counter. Unable to break in midair, Silicobra slams directly into Wobbuffet, and is then sent flying back with extreme force. Sensing weakness, Jessie lobs a Pokeball, and with 3 rattles, it comes to a stop, signifying the success of her first Galarian capture. The team are quick to celebrate this success, with Meowth agreeing to check in the back of the mini-fridge to see if they have any fancy sodas they can toast. Little do they know that high above their heads, a certain Flygon has spotted them and is en route to notify its trainer. Back in Hammerlock, Ash and Scorbunny have searched high and low for their lost friends. Not even the appeal of tasty snacks or fun battles have been able to distract them, and as they pass the Central Plaza fountain for the 3rd time in an hour, Ash sits dejectedly on the rim, saying that he hopes Pikachu's okay. Seeing its trainer's distress, the usually playful Scorbunny hops up onto his lap and nuzzles him, trying to make Ash feel better. Ash thanks it for that, patting its head and promising that he'll be alright, he's just worried about his friend. Scorbunny nods as if to say that it's worried too, but before more can be said, the ringing of Ash's Rotom phone draws their attention. A very windswept Bee is on the other end, and in her measured voice, she tells Ash that Flygon's found Team Rocket, and they're on their way to pick him up. Her face then takes a distinctly green hue, and from out of view, Raihan teasingly tells her that if she has to puke, it better not be on him, since these gym uniforms are expensive. Bee stoically replies that he has nothing to worry about, since she has total mastery of her body and will not succumb to weakness no matter how much she hates flying. Ash earnestly thanks her for making the sacrifice for the sake of their Pokemon, and the girl nods that it's her honor to do so. The call then ends, and moments later a Flygon with 2 riders comes into view. Not having time to land, Raihan simply has the ground dragon lower its altitude to the point where it's gliding over the ground and tells Ash to jump. Ash and Scorbunny nod, and then as one begin to make a running start. Soon they come level with Flygon, and Ash lowers a hand so that Scorbunny can climb on. With a flick, he places the little fire type on Flygon's back, then makes a leap of his own. Unfortunately for Ash, he failed to account for the fact that where Flygon is when he starts his leap is not where it will be when he ends it, and so misjudges his angle, landing not on Flygon's back, but on its tail. As a result, he starts to slip off, but before he can fall, Scorbunny grabs his wrist while Bee holds onto Scorbunny. Together the pair are able to help Ash find purchase and seat himself behind them. When everyone is holding on tight, Raihan gives Flygon the signal, and it rises up once more, gaining both speed and altitude, while a very unhappy Bee tries to suppress a groan. It does not take Flygon long to reach the plateau, and to their good fortune, Team Rocket are still partying it up. When the villains see their enemies in the horizon, they panic, but in their scramble to pack up their camp, they give Flygon enough time to land. Ash, Raihan, and Bee then climb off the dragon's back and demand that Team Rocket return their Pokemon. Jessie says there's no chance of that, and so brings out her Silicobra. James does likewise with his Stunfisk, but instead of joining its partner in battle, it instead doubles back and clamps around James's shin, making him howl in pain. Finally, the blue-haired Rocket manages to convince it to let go, and so the 2 Pokemon square off against the twerps. As they're already out, Flygon and Scorbunny step up to battle for Raihan and Ash, and so the double battle begins. Scorbunny, with its rash personality, is the first to act, running its Stunfisk and using Tackle to ram it into the side of Team Rocket's balloon. Like before, its eyes briefly flash white, and in that moment it seems to gain an added level of strength. Meanwhile, Silicobra lunges at Flygon and attempts to bind its wings. However, this is unsuccessful, as a speedy Steel Wing instead sends the serpent spiraling back. The heroes then press their advantage with a now red-eyed Scorbunny using a super effective Ember, while Flygon drops Silicobra with a Dragon Claw to the top of its head. The 2 Pokemon faint, and behind them, Team Rocket grimace, seeing the anger in the twerp's eyes. Then, to make matters worse, they hear the sound of electronics being deactivated, and turn to see that during the battle, Bee snuck around them and deactivated the energy cages, freeing Pikachu and Duraludon. The electric type then hops into its trainer's arms for a hug, and both laugh in joy at their reunion. However, this is not to say that either of their anger is diminished one iota, as Ash soon asks Pikachu if he would like to do the honors. Pikachu nods, and then with a fearsome cry of its name, lets loose a massive thunderbolt which sends Team Rocket blasting off again. With the villains defeated and everyone back together, Bee asks what they're going to do now. Raihan admits that after the severe damage Team Rocket caused to his gym, they'll probably have to postpone their match. Ash agrees, and so the gym battle is determined to have ended in a draw. As for where to next, Bee suggests why not head further north, since if they continue along this route, they'll reach her hometown of Stow-on-Side before long, and Ash can challenge their gym. Everyone finds this agreeable, and so plans are made to head for Stow-on-Side. That evening, when Raihan has gone to bed, Ash approaches Bee and in a quiet voice asks her to train with him. Bee says she would be happy to, but asks what prompted this. Ash explains that though his battle with Raihan was called a draw, during the Gigantamax clash, he saw Pikachu lose hold of its lightning bolt at the last second, meaning that had the battle continued, they would have lost. Bee nods, asking if that revelation upsets him, but Ash smiles that actually it's the opposite. It excites him. After winning the Alola League, he was afraid that he'd reached his peak, but seeing how strong everyone in Galar is, and having a great rival like Raihan, has shown him just how far he still has to go to become a Pokemon Master. Bee nods approvingly, saying that she respects Ash's warrior spirit, and the young man grins that the feeling's mutual. That's why starting now, he's going to be way more serious in his training, so that when he and Raihan face off again, he will win for sure. And that's where we'll leave things. How will Ash's reinvigorated spirit help him and his Pokemon to grow? What challenges await our heroes in Stow-on-Side? And when the time comes, will Ash be able to defeat Raihan in their third battle? Find out as the journey continues.